show up tonight because of the Chiefs game. It's over, but
Yeah, oh, right.
you know, if people had
Yeah,
gone to parties or
yeah, very good.
like Kansas City,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Did they win? Sorry, I was working today, so.
Yes, they won pretty handily.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, I think when I left, it was still in the fourth quarter, but it was like 41-10 or something.
Wow. That's good. Yeah, we tried to hear it over downtown at the guitar shop, and we couldn't get it to come in there, so it was just like, man, gotta give up.
Yeah, it wasn't much of a game. Most of the starters didn't even play. It was almost like a preseason game. Most of them didn't play in the fourth quarter. So.
Right, right.
You work for the paper newspaper?
No, I work for the China, at the car store.
Yeah.
Yeah, on Mass Street. Yeah. It's pretty close to the newspaper.
Yeah. Have you been here before?
Just one time, just the last time.
Yeah.
This is my first time.
Yeah, there's a few people outside visiting. We'll be ready a couple more minutes.
You know that, you mean the Baker, when you said Baker newspaper, did you mean for this place?
Yeah.
Well, no, I had an email this afternoon that some lady from the student newspaper at Baker was going to come down.
Oh, right, I see. I just wonder, my name's Baker, so it gets confusing
Oh.
sometimes. But no, I'm not that person. I just happen to be named Baker.
Oh, so they didn't name the wetlands after you?
No. Not that I know of, no.
Yeah.
It's extremely common.
How's the communist doing?
Yeah.
That's good.
Paul Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you?
Fine.
You got me here. I wouldn't be here, but.
Oh, excellent.
I
Come up here, I guess.
hope things go well for your mom. And she and her dad.
Alex and Dave, they're always the worst.
Right.
And just they wear terminal.
It's rare
On
for
the
me.
flip side, I had an undergraduate
Yeah.
program that I'm more enthusiastic.
It's gorgeous.
Did you see the one
Yeah.
that was here a few
As long
years
as it's
ago?
on campus or.
No, I
There
think
was
I
north,
saw
there was
it.
north of the road.
She did not respond to it. I saw it.
Student groups, I was trying to get a student group sitting, but then she went sideways when she was graduating.
Are you basically working remotely now?
No. I had
Right.
one tomorrow.
Well, we actually have bylaws.
We were just going to the office in the morning.
They have an office.
So 11.
That's all over Kansas, it seems
But,
like.
yeah, I don't have, trying to get,
Yeah.
students talk to me about having
Yeah,
students.
I think.
Well, I mean, you could just do the student group as sort of an astronomy
How
club.
many
Yeah.
people do
I
they?
think that's what she wants to go to events, so we don't wanna do outreach really this time. She
Right.
wants to get people to astronomy
Yeah.
things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean, if, you know, it's half the battle is getting them to go. You know, maybe if they go a few times.
She was not kidding, though. She brought, just by herself. I don't know how she did it either. She just, yeah, so, but I was trying to figure out a way to
Applications.
coordinate this all.
Right,
Is she gonna be on the call Friday?
She is not, no. Another undergraduate is on there. I can probably find her. I don't know if she'll be able to. She's also taking 30 hours. She's good students, really.
right.
I don't know.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, and thank you for taking the time to call her.
Well, after cooking,
That would make tenure track money. Already, but
I mean, yeah, I mean, if they just wanted to start like a
Oh,
club,
I'm trying to figure, because it feels like we're all doing different enough stuff. It'd be really nice to just have some competing though, because I feel like there's always like a lot of going different ways. And I can't seem to get the grad students to come here. I know I can't get the graduates to come here, but I might be able to get some of them to come to us sometimes. That might be something.
well, yeah.
We got the follow
Yeah, that's cool.
well, I mean, I'd come to the eclipse thing, but
No, y'all are gonna do, I
We're gonna
figured
do-
y'all's is gonna have more people anyway, because I didn't realize students didn't leave at that time.
I used to apply.
Not there.
oh, really?
But to any point, I don't see those fantastic stairs and festivals. People are talking about us, they don't go anywhere.
Well, mostly the grapevine, that's.
Right.
Families don't like coming to campus.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that,
Right.
museum for?
But it's a Saturday, the parking's not as much a nightmare on the
Well,
weekends
those
as
things
it is
go
during
around.
the week.
Oh, windmills?
No, these things go right close to the ground and
But I
Children.
don't know, I'm trying to figure out a way.
Remember
Yeah.
your last planners?
well, except, and they have a museum for them in Abilene.
For how better.
That's interesting.
But this one's,
In my mind.
there's something talking about some more historic museum where they have some old ones on display.
Right.
In Bonnie County,
Okay.
and one of those
Especially because the
facilities
concept wasn't 45
on the east side of Bonnie County.
Yeah.
It's just much,
Okay.
not very
So anyway, I was thinking of trying to convince them to leave the
I
student,
always
like
think
in my
it's
mind,
like
I remember they call those things that go
the church was.
Oh,
So they would hold something in there. They make yours every year.
Right.
But they may not all get.
Yeah, if we can get some, maybe a little bit of crossover,
They have a two-story.
that'd be good.
Rubber
My
band.
purpose is trying to get them to start.
Folk art and mall.
It's not here, but I'm trying to show her, she said,
So it must get pretty beautiful.
Yeah, that could be.
it looks like,
The ones
Yeah.
that Abilene.
she's like, I want to see the astronomy.
Yeah.
She's talking about philosophy of astronomy. Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But this student,
But,
she's trying to be here, she's like,
But,
great,
you have a little
Yeah, that's it.
office in town, so
that's a
you
little more, yeah.
only have to go
Yes,
to.
She's
I'm like,
in-
this
she's
is the
in the
philosophy
right.
of astronomy, and I was like, I don't know what that is, and I.
You
It's
don't.
a little bit western, but it's that same kind of,
She might be able to
it's
have
that
some
same design,
interesting
but actually it's a little bit,
conversations
just a
with
tiny bit less than.
professor that did the Halloween presentation.
I bet,
With,
Oh, okay,
changing, it's
yeah.
closing out something.
And then the research you can do on the net, like legal research.
I can do it on my couch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's chair for the department.
6 years.
Good for her.
Mhm.
All right, well, I think the Chiefs game probably keeping a few people at home tonight, so
All right.
let's go ahead and get started. Because we're gonna be able to see the moon even if it's still a little bit light out. So anyway, I wanted to spend the first part of the meeting just kind of going over the plans that are already in place. Talk a little bit about some of the plans that we don't have finalized yet with the other event of the KU. As everybody knows, we've got a solar eclipse coming up on Saturday the 14th. Starts about 10:30, ends about 1:30. Maximum eclipse is right around noon. This is going to be what it's going to look like from Lawrence at maximum eclipse. So a little over 70% of the sun will be covered by the moon. But we're going to have a couple of different, I probably need to turn this off. There, you can see it. The club is going to be doing an event, not in association with the library, but in the lawn next to the library. And then we're going to have something going on up at KU. We haven't finalized the details on that one yet. So we'll just talk a little bit about the one that we do have planned. So we've already got the special use permit from the city. The two folks that I worked with the last couple of events at the library are both going to be on vacation that week, so they weren't able to help us out. So I just went through, since that lawn, which I didn't realize is not really associated with the library, it's it falls under the jurisdiction of Lawrence Parks and Rec. So we filed for the special use permit, and I went around with a couple of different people about the fee for the property and got that fixed. So we're getting it at no charge, which is nice.
Good.
We'll probably end up being more up in this area, up in the top level, just because there's more walking traffic up here at the front of the building than there is at the back. So we'll probably set up most of the telescopes and everything up there by the stairs. We've got a flyer that's out, put it out on the Facebook page. I've had to make one change. I had a little Lawrence Public Library logo in there next to the name, and they asked me to remove that since it's an official library event. And I was like, fine, whatever. We can do that. So you may see, it's been shared a number of times, so you may see some floating out there on Facebook that have the logo. I can't do anything about that. We'll probably start, I have the space reserved from 10 to 2, assuming it takes a while to set things up and tear things down when it's over. So that's already done. This is kind of what I've got planned for activities. All this is dependent upon how many people we have that are going to come out to help. Since we didn't have a big turnout tonight, I'll probably send something out to the club on email, maybe a survey monkey or something like that, to see who'd be willing to help with different pieces. Because it is solar observing, we're going to need to have one person at each telescope just for safety reasons, if nothing else. We don't want people pulling the filters off the front of the scopes or anything like that. And then the activity pieces are just going to be dependent upon, how many other people we have that are helping out. So I've got handouts and all that kind of stuff ready to go. I got some stickers that say I saw the solar eclipse that we can give to the kids, and I guess the adults too. They've got to have a sticker. But a lot of that's just going to be dependent upon. Right now, I know I've got 3 white light filtered telescopes, 1 hydrogen alpha telescope and a couple of the sun spotter kind of a thing. And then I've got I tested it this morning and it works just fine. Sun funnel that we can use too, which is kind of fun for the kids. It's on one of those old the little ball telescopes. So I'm not worried if the kids want to, aim that one themselves. It doesn't track, so it's going to have to be re-aimed. But we've got all of these activities. I have the materials for. It's just a matter of whether we have the number of volunteers that we need to run some of those. So I'll send that out here this week and see how many people we can get lined up. And then obviously if anybody, Bill wasn't able to make it tonight, but I need to talk to him and see if he can bring his hydrogen alpha telescope as well. So we'll get it all lined up in the next few days. The other event is going to be someplace up on the KU campus. I actually have a call with Jennifer and some of the grad students that are going to be involved in planning it to try and work out some of the details this coming Friday. So if you got an email that said that one of your invitees was waiting, because for some reason I thought it was last Friday and I joined the meeting and sat there for 15 minutes and then realized it was coming Friday. But once we get those details ironed out, then we'll let everybody know the location and everything there. If that's something that they would prefer to do rather than come down to the library, it's entirely up to each of you on which location you'd like to go to. But what we need from everybody is, number one, just to spread the word. If you're a follower of the Facebook page, please share that on your page. Try and get the word out to as many people as we can. We need volunteers, so whether it's to do demonstrations or activities or watch the equipment, or just to help with the people, answer questions, all those things. So if you want to come and help, but you don't feel comfortable running a telescope, that's fine. We can find something for you to do that doesn't involve running a telescope. And then if you have any, equipment that's properly filtered to view the sun and you want to bring that, feel free. Again, I'll let everybody know once the details on the KU event are finalized, and then just please email me if you want to let me know that you can do it. And like I said, I'll send a note out to everybody, since I wasn't even thinking about the Chiefs game being the afternoon game today, so it wasn't much of a game, but I'm sure there were people who went to Kansas City for parties and stuff. So, and then I would be remiss for the next 20 minutes or so what I thought I would do. So I'm sure everybody's seen the news that OSIRIS-REx, the sample return mission from the asteroid Bennu, landed. The return capsule landed today safely. It's already in a clean room. It's going to be transported to the Johnson Space Center tomorrow, where they'll actually open it up and start looking at the samples that were brought back. The Johnson Space Center has a lab that was built especially for the Apollo moon rocks that came back. So it's made to analyze rocks from space, and that's where these are going to go as well. But what I thought we could do, while this may not be fresh on anybody's mind, this was from a television report that I grabbed a screenshot of down in Orlando yesterday with Dr. Umberto Campins, who's a KU grad, who's one of the mission scientists on OSIRIS-REx. And for those of you that remember, we had him in February of 2021 when we were doing all of our club meetings via Zoom. He did a presentation about the OSIRIS-REx mission, and it was shortish. It was about 20 minutes or so. So what I thought would be kind of fun, now that everybody's thinking about OSIRIS-REx again, is to go back to that Zoom call from a year and a half ago and listen to Dr. Campins talk a little bit about the mission and what the hopes were, and then already sent Steve Shaw, who's a retired professor from KU, was the one that got me in contact with him in the first place, and I'm going to reach out to Steve and to Dr. Campins to see if we might be able to have him come back and join us via Zoom again in the future to maybe talk about all the things that have happened since he presented to the club a year and a half ago. Just so you can, if you want to learn a little bit about the OSIRIS-REx mission from one of the scientists that's working on the mission, then
trip, wasn't it?
Yes.
thought I would play back a recording of...
All right, well, I think everybody that's been trying to get in is either here or in the process of joining, so I think at this point I'll turn it over to Steve and let him introduce our guest for this evening.
And please allow me to share, Rick.
Oh, I haven't done that. I apologize for that.
Well, I'm really thrilled to introduce Umberto, who I met in the early 70s, just after I got to KU, the year after. He then graduated from KU in 1977, and initially went to Rice University for grad school. He didn't like Texas and Rice, and so he got smart and came to Tucson to go to the Planetary Sciences Department at the University of Arizona, and got his PhD there in 1982. After there, he went to the University of Maryland and had a postdoc for 3 years, from 82 to 85.
With Micah Hearn.
With Micah Hearn, who I had met on Kidd Peak many years before that. He then was a research scientist at Planetary Science Institute in Tucson for a few years, from 85 to 89, at which point he was hired at the University of Florida, went southeast, and was there from 89 to 98, where he became a full professor very quickly. And contrary to what most people do, he then resigned his full professorship in order to become a program officer at Research Corporation and a senior research scientist at the Lunar Planetary Lab here in Tucson from 1998 to 2002. At which point he was made an offer he couldn't refuse. And by going to the University of Central Florida to form the planetary science program there, which in short order became one of the top funded NASA planetary science programs in the entire country. I think it was in the top 5, wasn't it, Umberto?
We are within the top 10, arguably in the top 5.
Oh, okay. So he was able to move things along really well by hiring a whole bunch of really good people. So at present he holds a provost research professorship at UCF, but was able to pull things such that even though he's on the faculty at University of Central Florida and teaching classes there, he now lives in Tucson. having sold his house in Florida and began now living in Tucson. He's had a Fulbright Senior Award in 2008, University of Florida Teaching Award. He has an asteroid 3327 named after him. So he's a kid who's done pretty well since he left KU. And just recently, he's been awarded a Jefferson, I have a piece of almond in my throat, a Jefferson Fellowship, Jefferson Science Fellowship to work for a year in the State Department, doing science content, educational, cultural things there. So he's had a tremendous background since leaving Lawrence, and it's a tremendous thrill to introduce Humberto Campins to give us a great talk today.
Thank you, Steve. I don't know if I can live up to whoever you described, but that's...
As I said, the kid's done pretty well since he left.
But I feel like I've been, people sometimes are lucky, sometimes they're good. I've been much luckier than I've been good. But I'll take it. It's worked for me. And anyway, so let me share with you guys my PowerPoint. So I have planned approximately a half an hour presentation and leave it then up to questions. If there is enough interest, I've added at the end a few extra slides on one of our recent publications on, on the results from OSIRIS-REx. And so I'm giving you an update on OSIRIS-REx. I'm a proud Jayhawk. That was the Jayhawk that they were using when I attended KU. And I hear that later in the century, they used a new logo, right? That's making me feel old, making Steve feel older. By the way, Steve and I met in the ground floor of Oliver Hall, where on August the 14th of 1973. Anyway, so we had a perfect launch of OSIRIS-REx on September the 8th, 2016. The typical, the weather that evening was that the sun was setting behind us, and the launch went perfectly. And we had delightful onshore breeze. The normal weather at that time of year would be a thunderstorm, a tropical storm, or a hurricane, which we had a month later. But OSIRIS-REx was launched about 2 milliseconds late. Then the main justifications for the mission, the main goals for the mission, are revealing our solar system history, which is bring back a sample from a carbonaceous asteroid for analysis on Earth. That's our main goal. So in that way, we will be revealing solar system history. Mitigating impact hazards. It turns out that Bennu is the most potentially hazardous asteroid. So we want to make sure that if we have to deflect Bennu or another asteroid like it, we want to be able to know as much about it as possible. Enabling human exploration. It turns out that asteroids are still being considered as a target for human exploration. If we're going to get to the surface of Mars, chances are that we're going to have to stop in the moons of Mars, which are both captured asteroids. And also developing a space economy. And I probably don't have to spend a lot of time explaining to you guys how expensive it is to put things in orbit. And so the moment, less than 1% of what sits on the launch pad gets into orbit. And so the moment that you can produce fuel from asteroids cheaper than you can put it into orbit, you're going to have a large number of customers. They're going to have basically a very important market that's going to want that hydrogen and that oxygen. So there is likely to be a self-sustaining space economy in the not too distant future, and identifying some of the resources on the Earth asteroids like those on Bennu is part of our mission. So our name stands for Origins Spectral Interpretation. So Origins return and analyze the sample from a pristine carbonaceous asteroid. Spectral Interpretation map the chemistry and mineralogy of the asteroid. Resource identification, as I just mentioned, resources for mining. Security measure a potentially hazardous asteroid in case we need to deflect it. And regolith explorer touch the surface and see how it reacted to our sampling process. So all of that makes up the name, OSIRIS-REx. Yeah, I was actually surprised when I joined the team. I was asked to join the team in January of 2010. To realize that this was only NASA's 4th sample return mission. The first one was Apollo, then was Genesis, Stardust, and OSIRIS-REx is the 4th one. A quick reminder of the asteroid belts, the Trojan asteroids, the near-Earth asteroids in red. One of them is Bennu, and it's actually the most potentially hazardous, which means it is not threatening Earth right now, but it has the largest potential of evolving into an orbit that could threaten an impact in another 160 years or so. Here are the asteroids that are that have been visited by spacecraft, we have among them, here's OSIRIS-REx, but in addition to OSIRIS-REx, it's Hayabusa 1 and Hayabusa 2. So we have been collaborating extensively with our Japanese colleagues, and as a matter of fact, I have a weekly call with a team that includes a Japanese, junior Japanese colleague, and my hat's off to them. They went to an asteroid, asteroid Itokawa, collected a sample and brought it back to Earth before NASA, ESA, and the Russians. They're remarkable space agency. And now they've done the same thing with a primitive asteroid, Ryugu, and they got their samples back already in their labs. And so Bennu, we knew a good amount about it before we selected it for our target. As a matter of fact, because it came really close to Earth and was observed in detail by the Arecibo Observatory. Here's some radar images, and then the modeled shape that came out of that. And because of the delta V with Earth being so low, we selected it as our primary target. And by the way, I am not going to be reading the chat while I am talking to you guys, so if you have a question, please interrupt. So the name Bennu came from a 3rd grade student, Michael Puzio. The Planetary Society held an international contest, and this student suggested the name Bennu, which is a mythical bird that comes out of the heart of Osiris. So it fits very well with all the Egyptian mythology. And so here is asteroid Bennu, not mythical bird Bennu. And so
Roberto, it wasn't named until after the project was on its way.
Yeah, it wasn't named until about 40 years ago.
Okay.
So it took us a while to go from 1999 RQ36 to Bennu. And as a matter of fact, when I published my paper on the likely origin of Bennu in the main belt, it was still called 1999 RQ36. Anyway, so here's a picture of the surface of Bennu, a number of images that were taken in December of 2018. And here's a little bit of a timeline. So we launched in 2016, we got there at the end of 2018. We spent about 2 years mapping it. At the end of 2020, we collected our sample, and in May of 2021, we're going to be heading back to Earth. Before that, we're going to do a farewell tour, and I'm going to image in detail the site where the sample was obtained. Okay, so here's again the orbits of Earth in green, of Bennu, and of OSIRIS-REx. And then, as I mentioned, in October 21st of 2020, we collected the sample, and we still had to stay there until sometime in 2021 because we were waiting for the two orbits to line up and for the return trip to be lowest energy. And so we have our sample, but we're going to go back and image that sample site and see how our 5 seconds or so, or actually 10 seconds interaction with the surface modified it. A little bit about robotic exploration, because I get this question a lot, and I know this group is more sophisticated than that, but people say, well, didn't NASA stop because everybody or stop activities altogether? People equate exploration with human exploration. And so I decided to add this slide saying that in addition to NASA's human exploration, great advances are made by robotic spacecraft, from weather satellites to Cassini to the rovers on Mars, and they are higher risk posture, no dangers to the astronauts, smaller and cheaper. And the no dangers to the astronauts is particularly relevant given that the Artemis program, they may still have their official target date of 2024 to put humans on the surface of the moon, back on the surface of the moon. That would take out the no and would add big danger to the astronaut. It would be crazy. All of the technical people are telling NASA that it's essentially impossible to get back to the moon with humans by 2024. And of course, there were a lot of political reasons why the previous administration wanted that. But I think the new administration is going to clarify that, and they're likely to move it by a number of years. Anyway, but robotic exploration is efficient. It also will pave the way for human exploration. Now, why sample return? We have an extensive meteorite collection. Most of those meteorites come from asteroids, and a lot of what we know about asteroids come from studying of those meteorites. However, 99.9% of what enters the atmosphere is lost before we pick up that meteorite on the ground. And so we don't know what that 99.9% is. And as a matter of fact, often during our discussions of the surface of Bennu, a lot of our meteoriticists on the science team were saying, that does not look like my CM2 chondrites in my lab. And I kept reminding the team, yes, that CM2 chondrite in your lab is the 0.1% that made it through the atmosphere. We don't know what we lost in the atmosphere, and what is sitting on the surface of Bennu could be very different from what you have in your lab. And so in the lab, we can apply the state-of-the-art analytical instruments that are too heavy for spacecraft. And of course, future scientists will be inventing new instruments that we can apply to that. So most of the sample that gets brought back by OSIRIS-REx will be curated and saved for future study. A small fraction will be studied immediately. Okay, and then one of the main scientific reasons for OSIRIS-REx is to understand ancient Earth. We believe that both the moon and the Earth went through these lava oceans phase where the surface was not a solid surface, and it was basically molten rock. And any information about, any organics that might have existed then were burnt. Once that surface cools and solidifies, it impacts with asteroids and comets that bring Earth its organics. But any evidence of what existed on Earth before Earth got erased before life, got erased by life itself. So we have a situation where our organic molecules that existed on Earth before life form has been erased by life itself. So once the surface cooled and solidified, and then making cell, hopefully. In addition, the developing the space economy the asteroids are ideal resources for developing the space economy soon, and this soon, I think, will be not much more than a decade, in my opinion. We'll be able to mine for fuel and be delivering it to Earth for all of the commercial and scientific satellites around Earth. And then the other thing that I listened to a talk by these people, which were called Made in Space, where they have these 3D printers that are being used in the space station, and their plans are for much more. And imagine, instead of having to build something here on Earth, put it in this small tube, shake it and expose it to a lot of G's, and then deliver it into space. Instead of doing all that, you can print your satellite in space, where it doesn't never have to even withstand 1G, and it can be perfectly functional in its environment without having the extra cost of making it, sufficient, making it withstand all that launching process that is not necessary if you print things in space. So the space mining and manufacturing in space is going to create things that we can't even imagine, because they're just not feasible to build on Earth, put it in a small tube, and then launch. Another view of Bennu, I'm embarrassed to say how many hours I spent just staring at these images. It was delightful. So most of what we predicted on Bennu was indeed what we encountered. So, size, density, albedo, etc. So most of the global properties is what we found. But we, based on radar and thermal observations, we expected a coarse sand or pebbles on the surface. And what we ended up finding were meter-sized boulders with maybe quarter meter or so looser material around it, but no pebbles, no sand. And we looked everywhere, and it was just not a very hospitable place for us to go down and pick up a sample the way we have originally planned. The other delightful surprise that we found, this was a tough challenge, but this was a delightful surprise, is that the asteroid was active, was emitting particles into from its surface in a process that we still don't know what it is. Micrometeorite impacts is one possible process. Thermal cracking of the surface because of extreme temperature excursions every day is another possible process. But when we first saw this, we got scared because, oh, those are particles that could be a threat to the spacecraft. We quickly determined that they were not, and then we studied them in detail. We published a couple of papers on that. So in terms of smooth areas, the navigation team said, we need an area about 50 meters across that is smooth sand, no rocks, for us to be able to deliver the spacecraft safely. So we took a look at this, and we told the navigation team, no such area. And then they came back and they said, the spacecraft is navigating so well, and we are so good, that we can put it down in an area half that size. 25 meters across, smooth terrain, no rocks. Give us one of those, we'll go get the sample. No such area. And then they said, how big is your biggest smooth area? And we said, well, less than 10 meters, and it's not going to be smooth sand, it's going to be all kinds of rocks around it that's going to make the approach very difficult. So we had narrowed it down to about 4 areas, and out of those 4 areas, we did much more detailed imaging, and we narrowed it down to Nightingale, which was not my favorite. My favorite was Osprey, but I now realize that Nightingale was a much better choice. I'll tell you more in a second. So we came down at a very low both vertical and horizontal velocity with respect to the surface of the asteroid. We deployed our mechanical arm with a sampling mechanism at the end. We sampled and then we moved away. And here here are the images from, you probably have seen these, but you may notice that the head of the sample mechanism moves just before it touches the surface so that it is completely perpendicular, parallel to the surface. So we did this and we found out that there was all kinds of dust just below the surface, which was good. As a matter of fact, we don't know exactly how much sample we collected because it was a maneuver we were going to perform to measure that, and we chose not to. I'll tell you in a second. But the conditions under which we sampled had been simulated in the zero-G flights of this mechanism, and under the conditions in which we sampled on the zero-G flight, that's how they collected the most sample. So I'm not allowed to give numbers, in part because we haven't measured, but there are estimates, and our minimum requirement was 60 grams. We think we have collected at least 10 times more, maybe 20 times more than that. So we are delighted. We put the sample into the capsule right away. The spacecraft was supposed to perform a maneuver that would allow us to determine the amount of mass in that sample head, and we chose not to because there was so much sample that it was actually overflowing. And any maneuver we performed, we would lose sample. So we put the sample in the capsule, sealed the capsule, so now it's stowed, and we can head back to Earth anytime we want, but, well, as soon as the two orbits line up, but our sample is now safe in the capsule.
What's the physical size of that container?
This is about a half a meter.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And that capsule is going to be launched towards the Utah desert in 2023. It has a parachute or set of parachutes, but it is also designed to survive entry even if the parachutes don't deploy. We hope they do. But yeah. And the other thing is that being on the imaging team, I've been talking to Bashar Risk, who's the principal investigator on the camera, and he suggested that we take a series of images of the capsule going into the atmosphere. So we will be imaging a meteor that is being produced by our capsule from above. So that's going to be really cool. So we're going to do a little movie of that meteor. Okay, so again, the timeline, we're hoping to get, well, we're planning on getting back to Earth in 2023, and that's when the sample analysis starts. So there's a little bit of a break right now for those of us who are who are on the team, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I got offered this fellowship to go do science and diplomacy until the sample comes back. And so, reminder that the Japanese Space Agency Hayabusa 2 came back in December of 2020, so they already have their sample. There's an agreement between NASA and ESA to share samples, so they're going to give us 10% of theirs, we're going to give them 10% of ours. If ours is as large as we suspect it is, they're going to get a lot more sample from our 10% that they're going to get from their entire samples. So, but we don't mind because we get another sample from another asteroid that is going to increase tremendously our scientific return. In conclusion, OSIRIS-REx is at Bennu until actually mid-2021. This potentially hazardous asteroid and target for asteroid mining. Objects like Bennu may have brought the prebiotic molecules and volatiles such as water to Earth, and the sample delivery will be in 2023. I will stop for questions, but I have a few more slides later if you guys wanted to talk about one of our interesting scientific results from studying the surface of Bennu.
I think we'll just stop there because a lot of the chatter after that was, much of it was unrelated to the mission itself. But anyway, I just thought it would be fun to listen to Dr. Cabin's presentation again, since it's all so fresh. And in fact, I'm repping my OSIRIS-REx mission t-shirt today, just as a result of that. So I expect that we'll start seeing quite a bit of information about the actual samples and some of the early findings here in the very near future, and that's why I'm going to, although I know he's going to be very busy now that the samples have returned, he was more on the imaging team than he was on the mineralogy team, the people that are actually going to be studying the rock. So I'm hopeful that maybe we can get him back to do another presentation with an update on where we were, or where the mission stands at this point. Bill, you missed the first part of the meeting, so I'm going to have to circle back with you because we talked a little bit about all of our plans for the eclipse. I'll just visit with you about what we've got planned and see if you're going to be able to make it, and maybe bring your H-alpha scope.
We'll talk.
Yes. So, all right. Well, that's all I had for this evening. So I think we'll wrap it up and go outside. Give me a few minutes to get a couple telescopes set up, and we can go outside and look at the moon and Saturn. I think will probably be the two most prominent things to see tonight.